Welcome to this episode of SDI Encounters, a podcast from SDI, the home of spiritual companionship. I'm Matt Whitney. Thank you for listening. Learn more about our work and the work of spiritual companionship on our website, sdicompanions.org.
I imagine that you, like I, have found that the magic of spiritual direction happens in those moments where there is this profound connection with our companions. There is a deep connection and awareness that arises out of this moment. And I have found that for me, it seldom comes because I ask a really profound question or I create the perfect conditions. But instead, it's more an energy of presence that happens when I feel deeply connected with my companion, when I feel that I'm aligned with something larger, of flow.
So that was Scott McRae, who is a presenter who's going to present for our upcoming webinar series, The Tao and the Art of Spiritual Companionship. And I love that he begins by situating himself in such a way that I think we can all relate to as spiritual companions, is that we so desire to be of service to others. And that desire can sometimes get caught up in our own ideas of what it means to be a good spiritual director. What exactly is the work of spiritual direction and companionship? I think most of you can answer that, but how we arrive there is often quite paradoxical to what we think of in terms of doing the work. And this is what Scott's getting at. And what I think he's going to address in this series is that when we do less, more can happen. More possibility, more presence, more awakening agency in the person that we are serving. What can the Tao teach spiritual directors and companions? At some point, it is likely you have encountered the feeling of being directly responsible for a companion's spiritual growth or progress. This is a perfectly normal and common feeling, but one that we spend a lifetime learning to set aside. We know that progress comes from within, and we trust the agency of the one we're companioning. And yet we sometimes struggle with allowing this process to unfold at its own pace. We feel some need to nudge spirit along a little bit quicker. For example, ask yourself this. Have you ever left a direction session wondering if you talked too much, or offered advice that in retrospect you're thinking about maybe felt overbearing or perhaps even unnecessary? Do you ever feel responsible for helping someone move forward or grow closer in the relationship with God, the universe, or however that person names the ground of their being? Do you ever find yourself just feeling anxious about bringing appropriate effort to your practice? Or have you experienced an inner desire to be thought of as a good spiritual director or companion? And does this ever interfere with your yearning to be more deeply present in your own companioning service to others? So what helps us become the kind of presence another person truly needs? Conversely, it might be that doing less offers more. The Tao, meaning the way, is an ancient Chinese wisdom tradition that teaches us to live and accompany others with greater presence, balance, and trust. The wisdom of the Tao offers surprisingly practical guidance for becoming a calmer, more spacious companion, one who listens deeply, trusts the unfolding process, and creates room for transformation without forcing it. So here at SDI, we are offering a 3-part webinar series with experienced teacher Scott McRae beginning in August to help you discover how you can stay grounded when a conversation feels stuck. Be a listener without rushing towards solutions. Accompany people through uncertainty with greater ease. Recognize when doing less actually creates more room for growth. Deepen your own contemplative life so your presence becomes your greatest gift. And integrate Taoist wisdom, regardless of your own faith, tradition, spiritual orientation. So here's a little bit more from Scott on his inspiration for this upcoming 3-part series. And let me tell you a little bit about him. Scott's offered several teachings for SDI over the past couple of years. You may have seen him offer a workshop at a conference or participated in one of his webinars before. Scott's been offering spiritual direction and training for over 25 years, continues to provide educational resources through the Spiritual Direction Learning Lab. He's an ordained pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, holds an MDiv from Yale University. His professional journey has spanned church and campus ministries, hospital chaplaincy, and leadership roles, all of which have shaped his approach to spiritual guidance. He's based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, enjoys life with his wife, their adult daughter, and their wonderfully quirky rescue dogs.
I imagine that you, like I have found, that the magic of spiritual direction happens in those moments where there is this profound connection with our companions. There is a deep connection and awareness that arises out of this moment. And I have found that for me, it seldom comes because I ask a really profound question or I create the perfect conditions. But instead, it's more an energy of presence that happens when I feel deeply connected with my companion, when I feel that I'm aligned with something larger, a flow. There's a vital presence that comes forward in spiritual guidance work that I think is something the Tao Te Ching points to. The Tao Te Ching is this ancient Chinese wisdom tradition that I have found fits so beautifully with the work of spiritual companioning. It's not about fixing life in any way. It's not about fixing clients. Instead, it's more about flowing with our companions, flowing with life, entering into a different energy of connection. Hi, I'm Scott McRae, and I'm very excited to be offering in July and August a class called The Tao and the Art of Spiritual Companioning, 7 Pathways to Engaged Presence. We all want to be effective with our companions. We want to be helpful. And it's so easy for us, I know it has been for me, to try to effort my way into that, to try to control sessions and to try to become sort of managing things so that they work well. But I've often found that that just doesn't work. The more I effort, the more things seem to stall. And I think we can find answers to why that is in this beautiful spiritual tradition of the Tao Te Ching. It really offers a different way of being in the world and of being with people in this kind of work. It offers a unique wisdom that I think pairs so beautifully with the practical work of spiritual direction. And so that's really what I want to explore through this course. And what I have found as I've applied this material is that I tend to be more comfortable with uncertainty. I tend to believe that silence has its own kind of magic to it. I found that working with resistance, bringing curiosity to resistance, has been really a great learning that has come out of the Tao Te Ching for me. And I'm really less attached to outcomes and much more connected, I think, to the ways that spirit may be flowing as we work with companions. And so in many ways, it has felt like it's helped me to move beyond sort of the control efforts that my ego wants to always enact. It has helped me to trust on a soulful level that there's something more happening. And it's helped me to move into sort of a flow with spirit. So how are we going to proceed with this material? Well, over 3 weeks, we're going to look at first the way of the Tao, and we'll look at 7 different principles within the Tao that are sort of primary themes. And in this first class, the way of the Tao, we'll look at the themes of presence and flexibility. and how these two fundamental postures really help us to root into this different kind of pathway as we companion people. The second class is going to look at three different principles. The principle of opposites, the Tao Te Ching, which utilizes the symbol of yin and yang, has a beautiful way of dealing with opposites. And so many of us get into trouble because we create dualisms, but we really want to look at the both sides of things through this powerful concept of opposites. And then we'll look at the themes of acceptance and letting go. And interestingly, these three themes of opposites, acceptance, and letting go all sort of work together, reinforce each other. So that'll be the topic of the second class. The third class will be releasing into the Tao, and we'll talk about the concept of Wu Wei, which is translated as effortless effort. And this is the sort of energy of flow that activates as we really are in this deep trusting place, and as we're attuning and aligning with people in their deep process. So we'll look at effortless effort, and then we'll come home to this theme of true nature, which the Tao has a beautiful way of understanding what it means to be human in relationship with the larger spirit. So all of this is a workshop that I hope will be very practical. This isn't about learning, becoming experts in Taoism. It's really about how we practice our work and take these 7 principles and what they might actually look like as we apply them to a session with our companions. So these 7 themes, I think, are going to be rich for us to explore. And I think this material is going to help us really follow up on that intuition that many of us have had and have talked about, that this work ultimately is less about doing and more about being. It's about being deeply aligned with spirit, with the more, in a sense, and that enables us to be deeply aligned with clients. So I hope that you will be able to join me for Tao and the Art of Spiritual Companioning, 7 Pathways to Engaged Presence. That'll happen in August, and I'd love to see you there. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see you soon.
Scott McRae's upcoming series is called The Tao and the Art of Spiritual Companionship, Insights for Deep Listening and Spiritual Presence. It's a 3-part webinar series happening online. It's live August 20th, 2026. You can watch the recordings at your own convenience if you can't make that time. We hope that you'll join us. You can learn more on our website, sdicompanions.org. We hope you'll consider joining us for this series. May you live with more calm, greater presence, balance, and trust in your own practice and life.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want to help us share and spread the word about the life-giving practice of spiritual companionship, you can help us out by subscribing to this podcast on our website. You could give us a like or even write us a review. Thank you for listening. This is Matt Whitney with Spiritual Directors International. Thanks again for listening. Your time and your presence here are deeply appreciated. If you liked this show and would like us to continue making them, please do subscribe now while it's fresh on your mind. Also, we would love to hear from you, so please feel free to send in your comments and suggestions to the email address podcast@sdiworld.org. SDI is the home of spiritual companionship. Learn more about us and our work on our website, sdicompanions.org.